And what I really want to unpack with you this morning are grown-up strategies for raising happy, engaged future leaders. And when we raise happy, engaged future leaders, we do help our children to thrive. And when our children are thriving, it becomes a whole bunch easier to survive not just the school holidays, but every single day between now and the time that they're fully independent and out there doing the things that they want to do, achieving the goals that they want to achieve. So we're going to, with your permission, look at grown-up strategies for raising happy, engaged future leaders. And we're still talking about how we get our children to thrive. How do we set them up for success? How do we really unlock their full potential, but do it from now, no matter what age they're at? What can we do now? What are the steps we can take? What are the strategies we can implement to help them to just stay happy, engaged, and to grow up into the future leaders that we really do need in this country and in this world? So that's what we're going to be unpacking today in this webinar. But why are we even talking about this? I mean, why is this topic even on the table? And the topic's on the table because of Meraki Evolution. Meraki Evolution is a brand that I founded that just talks purely around power, passion, purpose, and potential. And we're looking at leadership and women empowerment through the Meraki Evolution brand. And when we look at power, passion, purpose, and potential, one of the things that really holds us back in the workplace, holds us back from achieving our full potential, is the struggle as parents, as working parents, that we have with really finding that balance between career and family. And if we find that balance between career and family, and we're able to get our family and raise our children and embed in them the tools and the strategies that they need to be successful, it actually helps us as parents to become a lot more freer in the workplace and a lot more able to get out there and just achieve the goals that we're achieving. So balance and family are really important from a Meraki Evolution perspective, and that's why we're talking about family and raising children this morning. I'm Usha Maharaj, and this is my family. This picture was taken back in 2014, so quite a few years ago. And the reason that this picture is important is because the children were quite young here, and the strategies that I applied in really raising my children and working with them and helping them and enabling and empowering them are the strategies that we're going to look at today. And I've taken really grown-up strategies and worked backwards to find how can I connect them to young minds, to young hearts, and enable them to learn the skills and develop the tools and nurture a mindset that's going to help them to grow together. And these are my two young ones back in 2014. Now they're a whole bunch older, and that's my son and daughter, aged 15 and 13 years old. Smiley, happy place, happy people. But my background, other than being a wife and a mom, is that I come from a corporate background where I was responsible for recruiting graduates, for training them, for looking at the trainee accountants that were coming into the firm. I was a director in a Big Four audit firm. And my major role in the last 2 years of being with the firm was all things to do with graduates and students and young employees and leadership and moving them through into management positions. And I worked with a whole lot of students, from school students to university graduates, and I've spoken to over 2,000 students in the last 2 years. And all of those talks and all of what I've done has been geared towards helping these young people to overcome the problems that we normally find of new graduates or young entrants into the workplace. And the young entrants into the workplace actually come with the challenges and the issues that are embedded in them from a really young age, without us even knowing that that's how they're going to materialize in the workplace. And I've seen it from both sides. And this morning, I want to share with you, firstly, what is it that we're seeing in the workplace? And then secondly, let's work backwards to say, what strategies or tools or tips can we apply with our young and growing children to help them to grow up into the future leaders that we so desperately need in this country. And some of the problems that we're going to unpack and talk about this morning are problems that, or challenges that you might have experienced with the teams that you've worked on. You might have experienced with the young employees that you've brought into your companies or your organizations. And we're not going to focus on generations. We're not going to say Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and now there's iGen, Centennials, Millennials. I think let's set the generations aside and let's just look at it and say, what is it that we notice of the young people that enter our organizations, that work in our teams, that we work with, that we engage with, and then let's work backwards thereafter to see how we can relate that into strategies and tips and tools for raising our own children. One of the things that we see a lot, and this is not just my perception or what I've experienced in the workplace, there are a lot of surveys out there that talk to these findings, and this is what we're experiencing globally in the workplace. One of the issues that we experience is the sense of entitlement that a lot of young students or graduates or young employees enter the workplace with. And it's a sense of entitlement saying, I want it all and I want it now and I expect to get it. And we've got to think about, well, where does this come from? When we're raising our children, are we raising them in a space where if I want something, I get it immediately? If I expect to get something, I almost blink an eye and it's there. Or I sulk or I pout or I do something and the reaction that I get is the thing that I want appears almost instantaneously. There's a sense of entitlement. I mean, I had students entering the workplace who would walk in and say, "Where's my office?" I mean, the rest of us worked years and years to move out of an open plan space into our private offices, and you'd get someone walking in, a young graduate, saying, "Where's my office? Which office is mine?" Or wanting the parking bay that was closest to the door. Just a sense of entitlement that you see coming through in various different ways within the working environment. And that's something that we've got to look at and say, where's it coming from? Yes, indeed. Oh my word. Where's it coming from? It does stem from a young age, and it's not something that we deliberately embed in our children, but there are triggers that are teaching them that a sense of entitlement is what I'm entitled to. The next thing that we must look at is something that we're struggling with in the workplace is that young people are just constantly plugged into tech. Whether they're on watching YouTube videos, or they're on Netflix, or they're on some social media or the other, they're just constantly switching between apps. They're constantly playing different games. They're just constantly plugged into technology, whether it's their laptops, their iPads, their mobile phones, the smart devices on their wrists, and smart devices that now get plugged into all other parts of your body and your clothes and your shoes, but we're just constantly plugged into tech. And what that's doing is it's causing the youngsters to have a very short attention span. They're used to jumping from one thing to the next, and now when they need to work on a long-term project, they need to extend their focus. They need to pay attention for a longer period of time to one thing at a time, not multitasking or jumping from one to another. They're getting very bored easily, and they're not staying connected or engaged. So that attention span that's now being eroded because of the technology and their connection to it is something that certainly impacts them in the long term. Another area that we find very often is how do the youngsters handle criticism? I know I raise my children, and I often use positive affirmations, or I would encourage them. I the carrot or the stick approach. I go with the carrot approach, and a lot of us do that as parents, as we just nurture and grow, and we use praise and attention to really develop our children and nurture them and grow them and give them that confidence. But when they're so used to working in praise or living in praise and having that constant attention, when they enter the workplace, it's a whole new ball game. Now they're fighting for attention or competing against a large number of other employees who are all geared and driven and chasing goals and targets. And that attention, that individual attention that this child was so used to, does not exist anymore. And that often it stops them from being open to criticism, which they'll view quite negatively. And this is not just young employees coming to the workplace. I have coached many seasoned employees on these issues. So it's something that starts at a very young age, and we can carry with us all the way through our careers, and it can hold us back and weigh us down. So we've got to pay attention to it and put steps into place so that our children are not faced with this in years to come. So handling criticism, only focusing on strengths, not focusing on your shortcomings, or creating a culture of learning and development to overcome those shortcomings, is something that they struggle with. And another area that you see quite often is that of overconfidence. I'm just going to pause there. Patricia, the presentation is on. Please hit the play button on your screen and you should dive straight in. And to all of you listening, please feel free to pop your thoughts, comments, insights in the chat box, and we'll just pick it up as we're going through the presentation. And as I was saying, another area that we struggle with, or that we see quite often, is the level of overconfidence. Now, confidence is a beautiful thing, and a lot of adults struggle with developing their own personal confidence. But overconfidence is something that you're seeing more and more often in the youngsters that are entering into the workplace. And any strength, confidence is certainly a strength. Any strength is something that's brilliant, and we've got to nurture and we've got to develop. But whenever there's too much of that strength, whenever there's too much of a good thing, it is easily perceived as a bad thing. So overconfidence in this case would be perceived as arrogance, like this person knows everything. I mean, if you talk about teenagers, a lot of parents will say, my teenager knows everything. We're raising them in a world where they've got access to information. They're able to get answers at their fingertips, and they do feel a lot of the time like they know everything. But when you enter the workplace, even though you might have studied and gone through all of the technical steps that you need to, when you enter the workplace, you pretty much know very little to nothing, because the practical application is something completely different to what you might have learned in theory. And that humility and that willingness and openness to learn and ask others is something that a lot of our young employees struggle with, and it's something we've got to nurture in our young children as well. The next thing that we're seeing more and more often is just the inability to connect with other human beings. I mean, this is something adults struggle with. I mean, how many times have you gone out to dinner and seen a couple sitting at a table and both of them looking at their cell phones? You almost want to assume that they're having a conversation with each other over WhatsApp, or they're having a conversation with each other over Facebook or Instagram. We're all just so connected to our mobile phones and engaging and connecting through these electronic mediums that we forget how to connect and speak to and engage with other human beings. And communication is becoming more and more difficult for young people who prefer text messages, and very short text messages at that, with a whole bunch of emojis, and they prefer online communication rather than the real communication and the real connection and the real engagement. And that's something that children are struggling with more and more these days, where we're closing them off into this tech world, and they're loving the tech world, but they're not being exposed to the social skills and the relationship building skills that they really, really need when they enter the workplace. So that's something that you're seeing a lot and a lot more of. Another thing that's picking up quite a lot, and all of these are global problems, global challenges. They're not just limited to us sitting here in South Africa or in an organization. They are global issues. And another global issue that is massive is that of anxiety and depression. And if you go to the World Health Organization's website and you research what will be the number one source of mental health problems in the future. So now we're just fast tracking into the future. Our young children are going to be future adults. So let's look at the problems that they potentially going to face as young adults. And one of the biggest problems that the young people are going to face is that of the inability to connect with other human beings because of their constant connection to online resources and social media. And because social media is becoming such a huge part of their current lives, it's becoming something that changes the way they think. It's changing the way the desires, their wants, their needs, what they're chasing, what they believe they should have. And it's exposing them to just a whole new set of risks that as parents, it's really difficult to wrap our minds around, but it's something that we've got to become more and more aware of. So social media is brilliant. Technology is brilliant, but too much of any good thing, and no matter how brilliant it is, does turn into something that is a negative for our children. And the access to social media that they've got right now is going to be one of the biggest triggers for anxiety and depression, and mental health is something we must all be nurturing and strengthening so that we can actually take care of ourselves and not be exposed to the problems that a lot of people are struggling with. So let's look at how we can build mindset around that. And another area is the inability to work in a team. And all of these, I mean, if you look at them, they're layering one upon the other. So obviously someone who is more engaged on their mobile phone than they are with other human beings is going to struggle to communicate, is going to struggle to build relationships, and is going to prefer to work on their own and function on their own rather than within a team. And when you're an employee in an organization, what you do need to do is to work in a team. You need to be cohesively working within a team. And it's not just when you get into the workplace. I mean, our children need to work in teams on school projects. When they're studying at university, they're constantly needing to engage in teams. Teamwork is something that we've got to build in ourselves. We've got to build in our children, and we've got to get them to really see how they're going to work and function together. And teamwork is something that a lot of young people are definitely struggling with in the workplace these days. But what does this all mean for us and our children? I mean, we're talking about the problems or the challenges that young people are experiencing in the workplace, and that many of us would have noticed or seen or experienced from the colleagues that we're working with or the people that we recruit. And if you've got any experiences or if you're aligned with this thinking in any way, pop a note in the chat box and let's have a look at your comments as you come along as well. But really the question is, what does this mean for our children? Because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about our children and how do we nurture and help them to thrive, in this new world that none of us have grown up in. And how do we get them? What are the steps that we can take? What are the actions that we can take as parents to help them to really just build a solid mindset, to be engaged, to be connected, to have a happy existence? That is a huge ask. I mean, when you start mapping all of these out in front of you, we're asking a lot of ourselves as a parent. It's not just one box that we've got to look at. We've got to look at so many different aspects, and we've got to equip ourselves with the skills that we're able to impart onto them so that they're growing up into the type of leaders that we want them to grow up to into the future. And that is why we're looking at grown-up strategies for raising happy, engaged future leaders. It's because whatever problems, challenges they're experiencing as they grow up are challenges that we're experiencing as fully grown adults. And if we work backward, we can say, okay, perhaps if we had been exposed to these strategies or these tips or this training or this thought process or this mindset, we might not be struggling with the things that we struggle with today. And perhaps the new employees that walk into an organization would not struggle with those things either if they had learned these strategies at a much younger age. And that is why we do need to look at grown-up strategies for raising happy, engaged future leaders. And that is what will help our children to thrive. And in helping our children to thrive, I have to say that these strategies will help us to be better parents and to be better adults and stronger adults too. Let's look at what these strategies could be. And this is where you want to apply your minds to thinking about, well, how can I take this strategy and bring it to life for my child? And these are the strategies that we should be implementing, that we should be training our children on, and not just during school holidays, throughout the year, throughout their years, until they're fully fledged, fast-paced adults that are out there doing the things that they want to do. The first strategy is looking at self-awareness. And in looking at self-awareness, we want to say, well, let's understand our strengths. Let's understand how to build them. Every child is different. Every child is unique. Each one has a different set of strengths. I mean, if we look at my two children and I compare them, they're actually impossible to compare. They're completely different humans. And it's important as parents to recognize that our children are all different and all unique. And let's look at the strengths that are unique to them, and let's help them to develop and build those strengths. Because as we grow into adults, if we're able to utilize our strengths, we're going to add huge value in all areas of our lives. And it's our strengths that bring us a lot of happiness. So nurturing them and being fully aware of them is something that would help them to pick proper career paths that are aligned to who they truly are, and would bring them a lot of value and happiness later on as well. And going hand in hand with strengths are your areas of development. Understanding and nurturing and knowing what are the things that don't come naturally to you, but that you do need to build up on. And if I look at my son, one of the things that does not come naturally to him is just structure and order. If you walk into his room, his desk is absolute chaos. But inside of that chaos, he knows what's going on. But one of the things that I've got to help him with on a regular basis, and I'll do that until the day he can actually do it for himself. And we're getting there. We're actually getting quite close to that moment, and I'm hoping it comes soon. But if I go into his school bag and look at it, there's usually a pile of papers, and he would, during the school week, would just accumulate all of the notes from the subjects, and they would just be in one big pile in his bag. And we'd have to whip up that pile of paper, and I'll say, okay, now put them into the subject piles, put them in date order, punch them, and file them. And if I don't do that, then there's no structure and order for him. And then I go into my daughter's room, and everything is immaculate and in place and exactly where it should be. And if I look in her bag, there is not a single day that I would find a piece of paper that's not in its right place, that's not in its home. And that's exactly them. They have different strengths and different areas of development. And it's about identifying them, nurturing the strengths, and helping to improve in the areas of development or the areas that they're struggling with. And that's what's going to make them more balanced. In terms of self-awareness, the other thing we want to constantly nurture and grow is a sense of self-belief. When we believe in ourselves, and I mean, I work with adults and up to adults who are hugely successful in the workplace, and self-belief is something a lot of them struggle with. We've got to cement it from a really young age. Believe in what you can achieve. Believe that you can do whatever you want to do. If you nurture that self-belief, you're setting them up and positioning them to achieve whatever it is they set their minds to. In fact, you're positioning them to dream even bigger. And when they dream even bigger, they can achieve even bigger. So that's self-awareness, and it's something we should be nurturing in our children. And it's something that you must look at, well, what are the steps I can take to build that in my child? The next area we should always be focusing on is dreams and goals, and really teach our children to dream big in all areas of their lives. They dream, I mean, my son's always dreaming about the next PS4 game he can have, and my daughter's always dreaming about her next holiday destination. So they dream aligned to certain areas of their lives that they're most drawn to. We must expose them to the other areas of their lives. I mean, there's spirituality, there's financial management or wealth building, there's career, there's learning and development and growth, there's relationships and family. So let's expose them to all of the different areas of life and help them to create and dream and imagine in those areas. The next point is goal setting. And goal setting is a skill that would hold us in good stead through our entire life. And it's not just saying, I want to do this. It's goal setting, and then it's how am I going to put a plan of action in place? And then how am I going to measure myself against those actions? It's how to set goals and then how to achieve goals. So help your children to set goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, and then help them to track how they're achieving those goals. Those school holidays is a good time to get that going, because they've got a lot of time to get stuff done, and a lot of time that you can sit in evenings and just talk to them about these things and write little lists and help them to get going in those spaces. And then recognition and reward for perseverance and effort. We should recognize and reward the behaviors or the values or the goals or the dreams or the achievement that we want to see them doing more of. And how to work for what you want. We spoke about a sense of entitlement earlier on in this webinar. How to work for what you want is just hugely, hugely important. Let's teach our children to earn whatever it is they're wanting, earn their desires, work hard for it, and that's going to hold them in good stead for the rest of their lives. Let's also help our children to develop relationships. And it starts with teaching them how to value and contribute to your family. They should each be doing, I mean, you could get them to do chores. You could get them to set the table for dinner, clear up after dinner. You could get them to do good or nice things for siblings or other family members. It's really just helping them to create connection with each other. And relationships is something that's hugely important. My children, and that picture that I showed you of them back in 2014 was when they were smiling again. But the December holidays, before we took that picture, we reached school holidays, and the two of them were bickering constantly. And I don't know where they picked it up from. It could have been in school, or they would have seen other children, siblings bickering, and they brought it home, and they were just bickering constantly, driving me completely insane. But like the accountant that I am, I worked out the Excel spreadsheet and put the little plan in place, and it worked like an absolute charm. So through that holiday, and I take all of these strategies that we're talking about now and converted them into actions or simple tasks or activities that they could do. And it ticked off all of the different boxes. But one of them was, how do I get my two children to now become best friends? And today I can assure you they're sibling besties, and it's just brilliant. But it started off in that one December holiday. That was a turning point for them. And so some of the actions or activities that they had to do was they had to play board games, because they only wanted to play PS4 games or on the Wii or whatever technology that they wanted to do. But I said you needed to do board games, you needed to teach each other something. So you needed to learn something and then teach each other something. So there were a whole bunch of activities. You needed to go outside and play some physical sport together. And each thing had to be done on a daily basis. And you could only, if you had done it together, would you earn a reward. And at the end of the day, we discussed what they'd done and how. And initially, it was difficult for them to work together because they were bickering so often. It was difficult for them to work together. But what we found over the next week or two was that had changed. And while initially they would be arguing, and what do we do now, and what do we do next, and who picks this, and who picks the game, and it ended up that they were working together to pick the activities, pick the tasks, and get them done. So the teamwork had really improved, the connection had improved, the communication had improved, the respect for each other had just changed completely. And that's because we made the focus relationships and family, and actually just building that sibling bestie space for them. So look at your children, look at the things that they're struggling with, and say, how can I create a theme around that and build that into what I'm expecting of them the school holiday? If we leave it up to them, all they'll do is the things that they're most drawn to, and technology draws them so easily. That's where they're going to spend their time. So let's look at giving them other ideas, suggestions, and then putting a plan in place to help them to get those done. The other area we must look at are values and behaviors. Values and behaviors are what drive us as adults. Values and behaviors are what drive our children, but we've got to nurture the good values and the good behaviors. We've got to teach them what is expected of them. What do we want to see more often? And then we must reward those, and we must reward them, and we must help them to turn them into good habits that will just last them a complete lifetime. Values and behaviors are things self-explanatory. We want them to do what makes us happy and what's perceived as good and what's seen as good and what is actually good. So put a plan in place or a structure in place that helps them to get that done. Nurture creativity. I mean, in every space that we look, we're constantly focusing on logic and rational thinking and pretty much left brain activities. And in order to get the most out of ourselves as human beings, we should be nurturing our entire brain. That's the left brain as well as the right brain. And the right brain is where our creativity sits. And if we're not bringing all of our brains into all of our thinking, it's really difficult to solve problems that are bigger ourselves. It's difficult to make good decisions. It's difficult to have an imagination that just explodes. So we want to nurture creativity, and creativity comes from simple activities like art and drawing and coloring in. But you could go and look at it and say, what other aspects can we do to nurture creativity? I mean, you could enroll them in classes where they're learning to paint or to mime, or a drama class, anything that's just a dance class, whatever the case might be. So look at how you can nurture creativity in your child, get them to do something on a daily basis that's just going to ramp this up, because it's going to help them with their problem solving and decision making abilities. So we looked at, well, what are the key grown-up strategies that we should be looking at for our children? And I'm going to run through, well, practically, let's look at a couple of strategies or tips in terms of how you can implement those. How can you achieve this? The first thing you can do is expose your children to alternatives to technology. We can't expect them to think about it for themselves. They're naturally drawn to technology. If we want them to choose something other than technology, then let's put that option in front of them. Let's make it easy for them to pick an alternative to technology. And those could be board games. It could be an online learning course through a platform like Udemy, where my son, for example, loves doing card tricks. And I got him to do quite a few Udemy courses to learn card tricks. And now he can do a whole bunch of card tricks. So it's just, what is it that they enjoy? What would they want to do? Now let's look at a space that we can get them to do it, that they would connect with and enjoy, but it's something other than the norm that they're drawn to. Talk about the values and behaviors you want to see and reward them for demonstrating these. And these need to be brought down to practical application examples. So if we want to teach them to say please and thank you, then we should be giving them examples of when they should do that. And when they're not doing it, if you're serving dinner and they don't say, please, could I have a bit more, then you've got to stop and say, if we're doing manners, then let's use the word please. So how can we say that differently? So just constantly reminding them of the practical application of the values and behaviors that we're expecting to see in them, or that we're hoping to nurture in them. This is an important one, and it ties back to financial management and teaching them about appreciating and valuing the things that we give them. Get them to work for and earn the toys and rewards that they really want. And they could earn cash for these things, or the way I like to do it is to put a reward system in place, where whether it's associated with points or gems or gold stars or whatever the case might be, but rewarding behaviors, rewarding values, rewarding choosing something alternative to technology, rewarding the focus that we want them to be having, rewarding learning something new, developing a new strength, rewarding them for those and converting those rewards into the things that they want, so that they're still earning it. There's got to be a mechanism in place for them to earn what they want, and to take away the sense of entitlement that usually comes with, I want that new Barbie doll and then I get the new Barbie doll. So let's put in a structure where they actually do need to work for whatever it is that they want most. Help them to understand their strengths and take action to develop in areas they want to improve in. So knowing our strengths, knowing our weaknesses are just always important, but help them to see and recognize both sides of their coins. What are their strengths? Let's nurture and grow and develop those. And what are the areas they need to improve on? Let them articulate it. Let them be completely aware of it. Develop that sense of self-awareness around it, and then develop that sense of, let's do something about improving in this area. Let's learn how to improve in this area. Let's really learn how to develop skills to take us and turn what could have been a weakness into a strength. So those are some of the actions that we can take on a daily basis to help our children. Encourage them to complete activities that require imagination and creativity. Creativity and imagination is really so important. It's something that a lot of us don't invest enough time in. Help them to invest time in really nurturing their imagination and creativity. It's going to help them to dream bigger, but it's also going to help them with problem solving and really making better decisions. It just makes them far more well-rounded and balanced in their thinking. So help them to nurture that creativity and to really just ramp up in terms of the steps they can take just right now, and just hand over to you for any insights or thoughts or questions that you might have, and we'll take it from there in a minute or two. So let's just look at what you're thinking right now in terms of, is this practical? Is there one area that maybe you see that your children are struggling with that you could actually go and implement an action to help them? Is there, or are you doing this already and you're finding that actually it runs pretty well, or you've got a suggestion that works well for you that maybe others could take and implement as well? If you've got something to share or an insight, pop it in the chat box now, and let's have a look at it, and let's share it amongst us on the call today, so that all of us can learn from it. I mean, that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do, is have a conversation and learn and grow together. Those really are the grown-up strategies for raising happy, engaged future leaders, which I think if we do and implement now is something that's going to just hold them in great stead throughout their lives, and when they enter the working world and when they're out there contributing and making a difference. And who knows, maybe it impacts the way they raise the next generation of future leaders as well, which would be phenomenal for us. And the grown-up concepts that we've talked about today and that have been dotted across all of the conversations, these grown-up concepts are that of emotional intelligence, of looking at your strengths and your weaknesses, values and belief systems, looking at behavioral competencies. We've looked at goal setting, logical versus creative thinking, problem solving, decision making, confidence, networking, relationship building. These are all grown-up concepts that you see being trained in the workplace. They're grown-up concepts that we've got to roll back and see how we can apply to help our children to grow up into brilliant future leaders. Greg saying children learn by example. So we as adults need to set an excellent example. Absolutely, Greg. They learn from what they see, not from what we tell them. And if we apply all of these to our own lives, it does become easier for them to learn how to apply it in theirs. And I think your point to setting a great example is just hugely, hugely important. And really, at this point, I want to say that I've covered the content in terms of how do we nurture and raise children that thrive, and how you should be thinking about the strategies you can implement, not just over holiday season, throughout the year, to help them to position them to grow into the young adults that we want them to grow into. And at this point, if there are any questions, pop it into the chat box. But I want to just tell you about a program that I've got that will help parents to make all of these concepts practical and make it easy for you to implement in terms of how you're raising your children. I run a program called the Leadership Evolution Masterclass, where I cover all of these grown-up concepts in the grown-up place for people in the working world, career professionals. The Leadership Evolution Masterclass looks at really how can we unlock the most value from our career, how can we fast track it, how can we overcome the barriers and the challenges that hold us back. And very interesting to see that the barriers and challenges that hold us back from taking our career to the next level are the barriers and challenges that we need to help our children to not face when they grow up, because they're facing it when they enter the working world as young adults. They're facing it as mature adults who are really doing phenomenally well in their careers, but struggling to make the leap into the next level. And I teach all of these concepts and principles and strategies and tools through a Leadership Evolution Masterclass, where I focus really on keeping it simple and practical being most important, and where we've seen candidates just exploding in terms of the results that they've achieved after the program. And what we want to do through Meraki Evolution is offer up a Leadership Evolution Masterclass for parents that is focused entirely on how do we take all of these principles and strategies and package it into something that we can implement on a daily basis with our children, but in a way that's going to be easy for them to want to implement and apply and learn and do. So really making it practical and effective for parents to utilize going forward. And in this program, which will launch in Feb 2020, which will go live in Feb 2020, it's going to consist of 5 live weekly online coaching calls that I will run. And if you're unable to attend live, technology is absolutely phenomenal. All sessions will be recorded and you receive the links to it. You'll have email access to me during the entire program. So we can look at any problems or challenges you're experiencing or any advice that you're needing through the session. There'll be an electronic workbook or journal, which is absolutely worth gold. And in this journal, which you would do with your child or your children, it's centered around all of these key themes that we're looking at, from a self-awareness, relationship building, values, beliefs. It's centered around all of these key themes, but it's made so practical that your child will be able to pick it up and to get some actions done. So there's a journal or an electronic workbook that you'll receive, and then we'll set up a private Facebook group where we can just keep in touch and where we can help each other. It's always important to just connect and help each other and learn from each other throughout the session. Class size will be limited because that would encourage engagement and just connection. And with coaching, I don't like to coach big groups because I like to have that one-on-one relationship. So we're going to keep class size quite small, and we'll limit entrance into the program. If I had to cost out all of this program would cost a fortune. It would cost easily from $12,500 upwards, but that's just a huge investment. And what we're really focused on through Meraki Evolution is making it practical for parents to bring in that balance and to really to unlock their own potential in the long run. So we're going to be offering it through Meraki Evolution at 1,250 Rand. The program goes live in Feb 2020. But because you're on the webinar with us this morning, we've got a webinar only offer, which will last until Friday this week, and that is $895, and that'll get you into the live program that starts in Feb 2020. Registration is going to be online. You'll receive a link together with the replay video from this webinar. If you're interested and you'd like to get onto the program and you'd like to know practically how can you apply all of these strategies in raising your own children, but knowing full well that it's going to help you as well along the way, then you've got to click that button and sign up. The $895 is going to go away on Friday. It's only going to be offered until then, and it's only offered to those of you who actually took action in the first place and chose to join us on the webinar today. And really, on that note, that's it from me. I've shared everything that I want to share. If you've got any questions, pop them into the chat box. If you've got any comments, pop them into the chat box now. Really, raising happy, engaged, active children is something that we should all be striving towards doing better and better every single day. I mean, learn, go out there, connect with other parents, just connect with teachers on YouTube, in any sort of environment, read books, because if we're able to raise a generation of happy, engaged, active children who are thinking at a whole new level, it's going to hold us all in good stead. I mean, that's what's going to shift the way the country is run. That's what's going to shift the way this world is run. So it's up to us, it's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to all of us as parents to do our bit to really just shift the way the children are experiencing life, and that children are being nurtured and raised into the future leaders that we need. That's it from me, Usha Maharaj. It's been fabulous having you on the webinar this morning. I hope that you've taken at least one snippet that you can go away and apply, or that it's helped you in your thinking in some form or the other. And I hope that if all of us together are focusing on improving and developing in these areas, that we start to see rapid shifts in the way our children are experiencing the world and in the experiences that our children are being exposed to every single day. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. And remember to connect with us on social media. You can find us at Meraki Evolution on Instagram and Facebook. We're constantly sharing information, offers, educational opportunities, and tips on taking action. We're all about women empowerment and leadership development. So find and connect with us on Meraki Evolution. Thank you once again for joining the webinar, and I hope to see you soon.